Hey everybody, this is Josh Cook, aka Seizures Palace, and you are back for Song of Week number 9. And today we're going to be doing something a little bit deeper than usual. I took a stab at a deep house track. It didn't quite fully pan out as deep house, but one way or another I got something a little bit deeper and different from what I'm used to doing with my electronic music. So there was some exploration, which was fun. Down the line, actually I should mention, I used to be over this way. As you can see, the video is now over here. I'm going to be doing that for probably the next little bit. Reason being, by setting it over here, I'm not going to be overlapping any important information and having to redo videos like I've had to do in the past. You wouldn't know that, but now you do. I'm also hoping to get a second video at some point. It's going to go just above or just below where I currently have my video, and it's going to show keys as I'm playing the keys. So that way you can kind of see what goes on that way. That being said, today is not one of the days where I'm going to be panning out a whole song in front of you. I've already done most of the composing. I'm mostly just at the mixing phase at this point. So that being said, let's get into it. So yeah, we have a bunch of, it's a really basic song. Basically I have some drums, and I'll explain what I did there. We have, that's just more drums, sub, couple basic sort of bubbly synths, and a couple sort of trancier sort of synths. So getting into it, I had some previously recorded loops that I had, and I've pitched them down. And what I've done is I've added a transient designer to this loop. And the first transient designer is set to lower the attack. Hold on a second. Okay. You know, this one here probably should just have its attack at 0. Let's just reset that. So the attack is at 0. The sustain is a little bit down. I'm basically just trying to tighten up the groove a little bit, so you're mostly just hearing the transients. So there's regular, there's exaggerated, and there's my middle ground, a little bit of the hi-hat still poking through. So what we have now is a little bit more punch in our drums, arguably too much punch, but we're going to do something to balance that out in a second. A little bit of filtering happened at some point later, just to kind of filter out one section into another, so I've automated this auto filter. We also have an EQ with a couple little notches out of it, and nothing really too crazy past that. So listening back, again, you can hear those transients. Let's listen to the second version. So I duplicated all that information, which is really just a big loop. And the second transient master, or transient designer, has a relatively long sustain, super short attack, and here's the effect. This really overcompressed sound with basically no punchiness. So when you go and you overlap those two together, you get this fat punch and really long sustains. It acts almost as a compressor, and because it kind of brings out any reverb that was within the loop, it adds more reverb, so it almost kind of acts as a reverb. So it's doing a lot of stuff, but basically it's just a transient designer kind of pushed to the extreme. So that being said, we have that all done. Let's listen to some loose hats. Okay, nothing too crazy, and then some tight hats. Again, nothing too crazy. You put it all together. Let's go from here. And the drum loops up at the top were actually both pitched down a tone, or two semitones, two notches, whatever you want to call it. And it gave this really sort of low, slow sort of quality to it. And it's at 102 beats per minute, which isn't really all that fast at all. So it kind of already has like a bit of a slowed down version of what I'm used to. I kind of thought, why not make it sound almost a bit in slow motion? Pitch it down, take down the tempo, and that's the effect. This guy's useless. Let's delete it. How about dong? Doong. Let's check out doong. This was a little sound that was just a massive preset patch, and it was just doo. That was it. And then I consolidated that. I swept out quite a bit of the high frequencies, and then I put a good sized delay on it. It sounds like all on its own, nothing too crazy. I like taking little bleeps, bloops, and clicks and putting delay on them, or lots of reverb. It's a trick that, not even much of a trick, but it's a technique that Disclosure uses quite a bit. And it's really popular for that English sound, Luna George, all those people. So shout out to them, keeping their percussion as something a bit more effect or atmosphere based as well. Here we have more drums. Let's peeps it. Oh, it's just a snare layer. It's subtle, it's blended in, nothing too crazy, just to add a little more punch on the snare. This was Contact. My guess is probably, I did this like 5 days ago, so I have a hard time remembering. I think it was Damage. Let's check it out. I'm working on a couple other new pieces too with that said, so this does feel a bit old. You can stay posted. I'm working on a collab with a right now unnamed artist, and we're going to pitch it to a label that he's connected with, so that could go really well. If that happens, I will let you guys know. So here we go. Really subtle stuff, and that's definitely Damage. I use the Electro Blitz. I think they have like 3 kits. I tend to use one of those. That's all part of Native Instruments. I have Complete Ultimate 10, luckily, saved up a bunch, got it, yay, and then that's all part of Contact. So Damage is great if you haven't tried it out. It's for, like, from what I understand, cinematic percussion. I use it all the time because I really like taking a bit of an orchestral feel and trying to incorporate it into my electronic music. Just gives a bit more of an acoustic feel, even though at the end of the day it's still all sampled. So you just don't have a bunch of laser and synth sounds all over the place. Here's the sub. Ooh, I gotta work out that sidechain so it's not so crunchy. I'll do that later. Anyway, so that's the sidechained sub. It's going root 5th, 5th, root 5th, 5th. Nothing too intense. So it's playing the first note of the scale, which is what? G. So it's G, D, D, G, D, D. Very common in deep house to have that boot, do, 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 do. I just didn't do a pitch bend. Here we have warm. I don't know, it's just called warm. Let's check it. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold right now. Yeah, so that was a sub layer. Think of it that way. It sounds like this together. And I gotta work on that sidechain. I think I need a different sidechain source. Sometimes if it's a bit too long, especially on subs, you can get a bit of crunch, and I need to work out the attack time so it's subtle too. You want your attack relatively short most of the time when you're sidechain compressing, so it acts right away. Excuse me. But with subs or really low information, like other low basses as well too, you want to offset the attack a little bit, or you get this weird crunch and some weird stuff happens with artifacts and stuff within the sidechain compression. So just as a small tip, watch out for that. I think this is my favorite part of the song. It's called Bubbles. It sounds like this. So this is a massive preset. So right now it's really filtered sounding. Here we go. So it's got a kind of cool sound with lots of delay on it, and that was all done within Massive. There's just a little bit of extra reverb added through our sends. And then some whoops. Let's check out some whoops. We have this first one here. And then later a lower one is added. Very dry. So note, even though it is the lower synth, I've swept out a lot of the lows because I want it to have mostly just, I don't want it to have any extra sub information or extra bass information. It still translates as being a lower sound, but at the end of the day, it's not going to muddy up what's happening with bubbles up top, and bubbles and warm and sub all kind of lend down into that bass region. So with the whoops, I was more going just for a lead. Different type of lead. So when you put it all together, you get something like. Alright, so it should be noted that I have an arpeggiator on both of these whoops, and they have a groove set to swing 8. So right now if I just hold a G minor chord, that's what we get. If I was to take off that swing, we'd have a very different sound. So this is a fun little tool that I use sometimes just on the arpeggiator to give a bit of swing and to keep things a bit groovier. And you can hear when I'm holding 4 notes, it's doing some weird polyrhythm stuff just based on the swing and the way the arpeggiator is working and stuff. So it ended up kind of giving this cool counter rhythm amongst everything else just based on the arpeggiator. So not a whole lot was done. It was one of those moments where you hold a chord and you're jamming over top of one of your own tracks and you can't help but to smile just because it was kind of serendipitous in the way that it worked out. I don't know if that's the right word to use there, but we're going with it. Serendipitous. Okay, so a little bit of EQ brought up some of the more, well, like the high end, but like nothing too aggressive around like 2 to 4. I think this is about 5, which is a nice 5. When I first started producing, 5 kilohertz was like my go-to frequency. Everything had to be boosted at 5 kilohertz. We all have that starting point, I'm sure anyway, or I'm guessing that we find one thing that we really love and we overdo it. For me, that was 5 kilohertz, and so yeah, anyway, I'm back there again. I avoided it for a while. It's like you love apple juice for 5 years, you drink yourself sick of it, you avoid it for a while, and then you come back later and you're like, oh crap, I forgot, apple juice is still pretty good. So anyway, this was me adding some apple juice to the EQ. We have some 354 hertz boost here. This is a really sensitive region where you can get a lot of mud, so watch out for that. But this particular sound, I mean, it's not too muddy, so just a nice crisp low, and that's where a lot of the low frequencies are happening on that. If we watch the EQ, there's a lot happening between about 175 and 400 in terms of the fundamental frequencies, or the first couple orders of harmonics. So there's that processing happening on the second whoop. The first one's basically the same thing. Actually, the EQ is very similar. There isn't the 5 kilohertz boost, and we're at about the same region for the low end boost. And for both, I'm cutting out around 800, 900 hertz. Reason being, there was some reverb. I'm pretty sure, let's double check, but there's some reverb, I think, in massive going on here. Oh, it's turned off. Wait. Yeah, it's because it's the second one. The first one here, you can see there's a little bit of reverb added. And reverb, I got this trick from Noisy. There's a lot of garbagey reverb sound around like 1K or a couple hundred hertz below, a couple hundred hertz above. It gives this tiled bathroomy sort of sound, so I oftentimes notch that out in my reverbs, or if a synth has a lot of reverb, I'll notch that same area out. Depending though, you don't want to compromise the sound of your synth. You might want to use a de-esser or multi-band compression. For me, it worked. It sounded okay, so it's not a game of perfection. Song a Week is about whipping them out, and I mean, with that said, doing them very fast, but also trying to do them as accurately as possible. But I wasn't going to get too caught up in that little mixed detail. So anyway, these two together. Oh, actually, you know what? I should show you what it sounds like if I boost that 882 hertz, number 5 here. So let's check that out. So that sort of sound is what we've got rid of, and yeah, that's just a cool trick. Right around 1K, when you're EQing your reverb, check out that area. It might help sort of widen out the reverb sound a little bit by putting a notch between the lows and the highs there. For bubbles processing, I did a little bit of a filter, and I filtered out some of the low end, and I popped up the resonance a bit to give a peak, somewhere around maybe 150, 170 hertz. This guy here is sidechained to the bass drum and snare, so if we listen to it, you hear that liquid, that sort of sound from like future bass and a lot of those newer genres. So something like that. Again, I need to work out the sidechain so it's not quite so crunchy. I'm going to do that before I export it later. Bit of sidechain compression, some filtering for different sections. Where is that filtering applied? Yeah, right off the start, just to kind of subdue things and then slowly bring them in to develop. Warm was just mostly EQ. I've boosted up a lot between 100 and 200 hertz. There's some filtering on massive that's been used just to kind of open things up. If you listen here, sorry, and then here, you can hear the filters opening up, and I'm not opening it up very much. If you listen, if I exaggerate that, I can get a really aggressive sort of sound in terms of the high frequencies, but overall I'm not really happy with it. It kind of thins it out at the same time too, so as much as it is aggressive, kind of loses some punch along the way too. The sub, I haven't done any EQing. I might EQ that a little bit, but the preset's pretty nice. And then I took you guys through the drums. There's not a whole lot going on there in terms of EQ and that stuff, mostly just notching out. I'm trying to be really subtle with my EQing these days, mostly focus on notching and then doing the odd boost. And I'm finding that's really helping to fatten up my mixes, because I was doing so much EQing before and setting everything in its own little niche pocket, which you should do, but I was kind of overdoing it, and it was thinning out my mix, which was not very pleasant at the end of the day. So my mixes are coming out a bit fatter. My RMS and peak volumes in the master are sitting a little bit nicer, so everybody's happy. That being said, again, I'm sick, so I think I'm going to wrap this up here for today. I've taken you guys through everything. It is the Victoria Day long weekend, so here in Canada we get the day off. If you guys are at a beach or whatever you're doing, just hopefully you're enjoying your long weekend. Yeah. Anyway, I feel like I have sick brain today. I don't know if you guys know what sick brain is, but my girlfriend and I joke around about how when you're sick, you're kind of dumb. So I feel kind of slow today. I'm going to wrap this up here. One more time, my name is Josh Cook, a.k.a. Seizures Palace. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this song of week number 9. It's hard to believe we've almost done 10 of these. Yeah, anyway, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and you stay glassy, Sand. I'll see you next week.